Welcome to Porch Play Chats, sponsored by the American Association for the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately titled IPA USA. IPA USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association, and as part of our efforts to promote play, we've introduced Porch Play Chats, which are conversations with people who are just as passionate about play as we are. Up on our website at ipausa.org, you can go in that top right-hand corner and you can friend us, subscribe, or follow our Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube channel, and magically, every Monday morning, a new Porch Play Chat will appear in your feed. All Porch Play Chats are free to you, and there are over 225 of them available since 2020 is when we started them. So it's a little crazy that there's so many out there. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm president of IPA USA, and with me on the porch today is Stacy Benge. Hi, Stacy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, we're so happy you're here. Stacy is an early childhood speaker who approaches learning in the early years with practicality and common sense, standing firm on the truth that children learn best through simple, authentic experiences. She advocates for child-led play to build solid foundations for a child's development. Stacy is the author of the book The Whole Child Alphabet: How Young Children Actually Develop Literacy, and it's published by Exchange. And so Stacy is going to talk to us today about the power of blank paper and crayon in children's play. I just loved it. So why is blank paper and crayon so important?
So I just in the last, well, let me back up. Many years ago, I'm talking like well over 10 years ago, I wrote a training called The Power of Blank Paper and Crayons because I kind of felt like we were complicating things. And again, I'm all about the simple and kind of going back to just what do we have that we can use? And I kept coming back to blank paper and crayons. And when we look at the writing process, not the handwriting, but the actual writing composition, it starts with children mark making. That can be like on the high chair, running their hand through food or water. And then we start giving them blank paper and crayons and we see them make marks. And that turns into the random scribbling to the controlled scribbling and then to pictures. And then eventually on the pictures, children start to emerge with their letters and then letter strings and words. So that really is that writing composition process. And so one of the things that I did when I was in the classroom is I put blank paper and crayons throughout my entire environment, not just the writing center, not just the art center, but like no matter where children were playing, they had access to blank paper and crayons. And I just think that is so powerful. And I have found myself the last 6 months talking about this more and more when I have teachers asking, okay, how can we bring literacy into child-led play? And I'm like, put the blank paper and crayons around. Because what we'll see happen is as children are playing, they'll start bringing that in a way they want to, in a way they see fit. So maybe if they're building a block structure and in their head it might be their school and they want to draw the restaurant next door if they want, or they want the sign, they might take that blank paper and crayon and try to symbolize that on the paper to go into their play. So it's really in that literacy and that writing process. This is what we consider writing in a meaningful context where it's connecting to the child and to their play. And what we'll see is children might go back to that over and over and over, that child-led repetition. And that's going to progress that writing process. We'll start to see that the picture they're drawing evolve a little bit more, each time. But to me, it's just such a powerful tool. And children might choose to use it differently. Maybe, we have scissors and tape and they can cut and create other things. So it's blank paper is just so open-ended. But from that literacy connection, I think it's one of the most powerful things that we can do.
Well, and I think that one of the things that people don't recognize is how early those skills begin to develop with the child, playing with the food on the table, and then how it builds on it. I mean, there are prerequisites, right? You first do this, and then next comes this next step, and then next comes the next step. But we just give them lined paper and pencils instead of blank paper and crayons. And the other thing I want to emphasize, which I say to my students in my classroom all the time, is don't give them markers. They need crayons, right?
Yeah, because that crayon creates more friction. And
Mm-hmm.
so when we look at our proprioceptive skills, which is our brain telling, when it comes to writing, our brain telling our hand how much pressure to put on the crayon or pencil, and how much, how much strength to hold that with, and how much pressure to put on the paper. It's that brain and the hand connecting, and the brain regulating the hand. When we have crayons, again, it has more friction. So it creates more of a connection as to what actually is going on with the hand, opposed to the marker just kind of slides. That's easy. Not as much effort's needed for that.
Yeah, and I think people have lost that. They think, oh, well, I'll just put markers in the art center because crayons can get broken, right? So that's sort of
Right.
that's the piece that I hear, and I there's lots you can do with broken crayons, so it's
Oh
okay.
yeah. And actually, like, I know OT sometimes like the smaller crayons because it really kind of forces you more into the tripod grip, and that can really help with that separation of hand, which needs to be developed for handwriting as well. So yeah, I mean, we can keep working with that crayon till it's just disintegrated.
Exactly. And so the one of the big things to listen from this is blank paper and crayons everywhere, and get rid of the markers. We don't need them in early childhood. So get rid of
Right.
those. They're learning other ways to strengthen those muscles and to have that
Mhm.
hand connection. Okay, so what else can we do? Blank paper and
Well,
crayon.
and one of the things, as we're putting this into our environment, um, don't limit children on just one piece of paper. Let them have as many pieces of paper as they need to kind of bring into their play and create whatever it is they want to create. So if they're trying to put a message on paper, they might need several pieces. Let's say they're playing in the dramatic play center, and um, they're pretending if they're making a grocery list. Well, if they need 3 or 4 pages to do that, that's okay, um, but making sure that we're not limiting and that we're just adding, what else do you need, in your play to keep this evolving and keep this going. But other things with blank paper and crayons, again, providing scissors, letting children, if they want to cut the paper up and create collages, or if they want to cut the paper up. And I always go back to the block center. That was our block play. That's one of my favorite things. But maybe they're making a snow, it's a wintry day. We're about to have snow here in Texas. So we're all excited about the snow. And, maybe they cut that up and they can create that into snow. But that paper is so open-ended that it can turn into so many things, and just really a great tool in play.
So would you give them those clipboards, those plastic clipboards with the paper on it, or is the clipboard a barrier?
I think have it available if they choose to use it or not. I think a lot of tools like that, it's like it's available, but it's up to the child how
Mhm.
they choose to use it, or if they want to use it or not. So, they might want to be crumpling it up for some reason, whatever it may be. But yeah, and I've heard where people, take the clipboard and we walk around the room, we write the room. But I mean, does that connect to the child? I don't know.
Right, right.
Yeah, it's
I remember when I was teaching, when we went outside, there were always clipboards in a waterproof container that was outside with paper and crayons. And so sometimes children would want to draw the tree, and I'd say, well, run get you go get and we would always take the lid off, when we were outside. But then they were able to go grab the clipboard instead of just laying on the ground because it wasn't firm enough for them.
Mhm.
But those were the clipboards to me were helpful in encouraging them to do it versus getting frustrated. My crayon keeps going through the paper, which is not a bad thing. Just
Yeah.
see differently. Right? Where
Yeah.
you put the paper instead
Uh-huh.
of telling them how to fix the problem. So blank paper and crayons outside too, because it really, children are amazing. They may see a new bird, or maybe the trash truck comes and they
Yeah.
want to draw the trash truck. So, just have it available. I think it's a wonderful idea. I never did that as a teacher, and now I feel really guilty.
No. Well, there's many things I look back on and go, I wish I would have done better with that one. But that, again, I just always loved how open it was. And then, I actually was doing a training yesterday, and the question came up with, if we're doing journals and giving children prompts versus no prompts. And I came back to, this is one of the reasons I love, again, paper and crayons throughout the environment is the writing is completely guided by the child, and it's completely it's very child centered, but it's very child motivated, so it's up to them when and how they bring that in, and it's completely their creation. But one of the things I always say, our role as the adult when children are playing is to stay out of the way yet be available.
Mhm.
And it's because if children are drawing and they've put something on paper and they're excited about it, they're going to bring it to us. And then if we're not overdoing small groups or something else, that's why I'm like, don't have small groups during playtime. You're just there and available. So it is when the child does bring this to you, what they've brought into their play, and they want to share this paper with you, we have time to sit down and go, would you like to tell me about this? And they may say no, and that's okay. But, I think a lot of times when they do bring it and show it to us, they want to engage in some sort of conversation and tell me about this. And as the child will start to tell us about, this drawing they've put on the paper in their play, and then we start to have that conversation. And then we can say, would you like me to write what you're saying? And that, if they choose to do that, that is a powerful way for them to see their verbal words turn into print. Well, we're making that print awareness connection. Children are seeing us use the alphabet in a very meaningful context that's centered around something they've created. And I think that if we are available to sit down and take 10 minutes and be fully engaged with that child, what's going to happen? Well, that's going to motivate them to go
Mhm.
back and continue to do more, and then bring that back to us. So to me, that's just one of the most powerful things that we can do. And one more thing I want to say, if a child's brought you a piece of paper and they want you, something they've drawn, and they want you to write, ask them before you write on their paper.
Mhm.
um, because they might have spent 30 minutes, drawing this to go with whatever their play was, but they own that. So they might not want us defacing it with all of our writing. So I would always say, do you want me to write on your paper or a separate sheet? And that gave that option to the child. But to me, it's just like that's how we bring, one of the many ways we can bring literacy into play, but where it's still very child centered and child motivated.
I think what is so beautiful about what you just described is the child has the agency. The
Hmm.
teacher's not saying, why don't you tell me about what you drew? Instead, you're asking the child, do you want to tell me what you drew? Instead of saying, let's write down
Hmm.
what you drew. I, I, and I didn't even get those words right. I think it's difficult for teachers to get out of the teacher mode
Uh-huh.
and to ask permission of the child if they want to extend that learning. And maybe the child doesn't want to tell you what they do; they just wanted to show it to you. And I think the other beautiful thing about those sorts of opportunities is the teacher then is, maybe she could say, could I take a picture of this? Um, so I can put it, up, or could I, if you want to take that home to show your mom or dad or your family. And so you're asking permission each time instead of
Hmm.
saying, here, let me write down what it is that you drew. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah. And so I think so much time we get into the directed mode, not, not not meaning to interfere, but we are
Yeah.
with the child's autonomy and agency. Ooh, so I love
Right.
that. I love that. I love that. Which is a great way to extend what it is that where they are in their development, and to scaffold that development to the next sort of level. So I think that's all.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
Any other strategies? What if you have an English language learner who where English is not their home language? Any strategies that we could use that would encourage them, whether it's in their home language or in English?
I think that's probably one of the beauties too of like the openness of like, drawing, because that is kind of universal, the putting onto the paper, and then, and then the pictures, and then, and I guess encouraging the child, if they again choose to share their story or their paper with you, and letting them do it in a way that is comfortable for them. But that might be like a gateway to an amazing conversation, or the child feeling confident. And if they're not feeling quite confident speaking quite yet in English, but if they're maybe confident with what they've drawn, that might be kind of a gateway for a conversation, with the child's comfort level in the language.
Oh, I love it. So, if we have children, I think the beautiful part of the blank paper and crayons too is you can see developmentally where they are in their writing process and just make notes of that, right? So that, yes,
Mhm.
you're at stage 3 or you're at stage 5 or you're at stage, wherever you are, so that then you can report that to the parents. One of the earlier conversations was how to make learning visible with families, right? Instead of saying,
Mhm.
oh, the kids had a great time today,
Yeah.
what they did, right? And
Mhm.
that they were joyful in their play. It, even if you said, oh, I took a language sample today while they were playing, and I just wanted you to see the amount of vocabulary that they were able to express when they were in conversation with a peer in play. Those
Mhm.
are ways to make that visible for families. Uh, and, even if you were to say to them, oh, they're in stage 4 of writing. Did you know that? This is amazing. And here's what to look for next,
Mhm.
so that parents are able to say, to see that play is a valuable strategy in a child's overall development. Kathy Gallo and Leanne Salcy were talking this morning about they're in blocks and they're building structures in blocks, and the architectural skills that they use, the physics that they used, to use
Mhm.
those big words with families so that they can begin to see the value of that child initiated play more effectively. So I think that's just another great way to make that learning visible, which is not the cut and paste product art.
Right. Yeah. And I think too, like with the blank paper and crayons, we can capture that, and you can actually see that developmental, evolution taking place, and to be able to tell families, and this happened through your child's play, so
Right.
that they can maybe see the importance of that child-led play, and children how we need to trust children in their play, and that that development really takes place during that time. But if we, I feel families look for tangible things, so if we can show them a progression, um with, okay, kind of started, with this scribbling, but we start to see it look like something, and your child was doing this during this type of play, and just helping those families see that and then make those connections.
Oh, I think it really is going to help families think that when their child is playing, it's not just recreation, right? It's not just
Hmm.
to do instead of um, learning.
Hmm.
And so I do think making those connections for them. And what I'll do, just so you guys know, on the Porch Play Chat, is I'll get the stages of writing, and on the Facebook page, I will attach that to this Porch Play Chat so that you have those stages of writing if you don't already, so that you can use that as a communication tool or as a way to demonstrate how children are learning through play. So I'm making myself a note of that.
Well, Well, and I think too, when we're looking at the stages, something to remember is, there's a starting point for all development, but children have to have opportunities and experiences to develop through these stages. And years ago, this was back before COVID, I was visiting a classroom, and these were children, it was at the end of their pre-K year. And they had like 5 minutes they had to fill. And this was a school that, boasted being academic and all these things. And anyway, the teacher just pulled out some blank paper and crayons. And what was interesting, these children who were turning 5 on that writing process were really more of like a random scribbling stage. And I
Mhm.
kind of asked the teacher, I'm like, how often do you let them just have this open-ended drawing? Do you have like paper and crayons, during playtime? And she's like, well, we don't, because we're focusing on these things. And it's like, well, really, your children should be, I can tell they've not had the opportunity, because developmentally they're really more down to what I expect to see with a 2.5-year-old, and so I remember that teacher kind of having this aha moment. But I'm like, this is a developmental process that children have to have the opportunity. And so again, if we have the blank paper and crayons throughout the environment where children can go to as they want, as they see fit, in a way that is important and resonates with their play and their world, that's going to help them, with that developmental process.
So one of the things that this always brings up to me, and I know I've said it before on Porch Play Chats, but when I was doing student teacher visits, I went to 2 kindergarten classrooms in the same school. So same principal. So because sometimes, it's the push down that comes from the
Mhm.
principals, but same school, same principal. And I walked into the first one, and the children were just arriving, and the teacher said, go to the table and write your name 10 times.
Wow.
Not even good morning. It was
That's a way to start your day.
go to the table and write your name 10 times. Now, did any of the children write their name 10 times? No, not a single solitary one. And she would say, you need to write their name 10 times. And she had their little name strips on the little letter, on the little writing things, um, all the way around the table. And of course, there were several tables because there was 25 of them. And so she kept saying, you need to write your name 10 times. You need to write your name 10 times. I haven't seen you write your name 10 times. And the children were getting really frustrated. And I was getting really frustrated. So I went to the next classroom after watching that nightmare for 45 minutes. I went to the next classroom, and the kindergarten teacher had children in play, right? They were just playing. Some were at the writing center, some were at the art center, some were in block, some were in dramatic play. She had all the centers. They were great assortment of materials in each one. And children would say, would come to the teacher, who was warm and responsive and a smile on her face. The children would come to the teacher and say, I drew something. Will you write what I drew? And she would say, of course. And so, and she would ask permission. Where would you like me to write this? I don't want it on my paper. Could you write it on the back of my paper? Of course. And so she would sit down and say, tell me what you'd like me to say. And she would write it all out. And and then children in the art center were putting their name on their art paper. It wasn't their name, but it was close, a few of those letters.
Mhm.
And children in the block center were labeling things with index cards that they had in the block center with, I think she had pencils though, instead of crayons. But and so they were doing their inventive writing, right? So it
Mhm.
certainly wasn't spelled correctly, but children were so engaged and they wanted to
Yeah.
do it. And it was such a contrast between, you need to sit down and write your name 10 times versus all this emergent, beautiful, child initiated experiences.
Mhm.
And so sometimes I think we we think we have to teach it instead of just allowing children to do it in their normal progression of where they are developmentally. And I've moved away from is it developmentally appropriate to is it developmentally effective? So if you can say to yourself, is this going to be effective wherever they are in their development to help them, have practice and repetition, then keep that strategy. But if it's one that you've been told is developmentally appropriate, but it's not developmentally effective, we really need to move away from that teaching strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we're doing so many developmentally
Well, and I think what you just said too, which would probably take us on another rabbit hole, but like that term developmentally appropriate is not being
used appropriately.
used. Yes. Yeah. It's like,
Exactly.
yeah. And I know like you and I know Heather, Santee also, or like coming up with different ways of saying, developmentally, but like you said, effective or responsive. And but yeah, but back to the blank paper and crayons, what's so wonderful about that is it can be scaled to the child's needs. So if we have a child who hasn't been exposed to blank paper and crayons and they just want to make a mark for whatever reason, that paper provides it. But if we have other children within the same environment who have had these experiences and they're on to using several pieces of the paper and we see letter strings happening, that blank paper and crayon provides that, so it can be scaled no matter where the child is and what their need is. It's that paper's there ready to provide it.
Yeah. Oh, it's so beautiful. Oh my goodness, this was wonderful. So hang on while I close this out.
Okay.
Don't go anywhere.
Okay.
To learn more about IPA USA, please visit our website at ipausa.org. And if you go there and you're on our website and you put a / and then you do white paper, you will find a wealth of resources that will help you in your advocacy for the child's right to play. So thank you so much for joining us, and we'll look forward to having you next time.
All right. Thank you.